The martial arts gym went silent as the old black janitor pushed his mop across the mats. A cocky young black belt smirked and stepped toward him. "Hey, old man," he said loudly. "How about a spar? Might teach you some respect." Students laughed. The janitor didn't. He set his mop aside calmly. He whispered, "If you insist, I'll teach you something." What happened next made the entire gym stop breathing. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from so we can bring more stories like these. The Martial Arts Academy woke slowly every morning. Before the first student yawned through the front door, before the punching bags thumped, there was the quiet. And in that quiet, moving like a warm wind through an old house, was the janitor, Mr. Ellis, mid-60s, soft-spoken, gray at the temples, beard trimmed but humble. He wore faded navy coveralls, sleeves rolled up, showing forearms marked with old, pale scars. Scars nobody asked about, scars he never explained. Every morning, before dawn, he unlocked the side door with fingers steady as calm water. The academy lights hummed to life above him, warm over polished wood and carefully stacked mats. He breathed it in, that faint smell of sweat and hard work baked into every corner. He liked that smell. It reminded him of years most people would never believe. But here, he was just the man with the mop. He pushed the rolling cart inside and started his quiet routine. Slow, rhythmic sweeps across the training floor. A gentle scrub over the mirrors. He wiped down the weight racks, tightened loose bolts, replaced frayed rope on the speed bag. He moved with grace no one ever really saw. Every motion, smooth, balanced, like his body still remembered another life. Sometimes, when his back was turned, the other employees whispered, "He's always so quiet. He's harmless. Old man just chills here all day." The younger fighters hardly looked at him at all. To them, he was part of the building, like the broom closet or the vending machine. But a handful of students, the respectful ones, the disciplined ones, nodded at him every morning. "Good morning, Mr. Ellis. How's the day treating you? Thank you for cleaning the mats." He always smiled at those. "Morning, kiddo. Y'all have a good session now." But the rest, most walked past him like he wasn't even there. He didn't. He never minded. He took pride in polishing the trophy case, wiping fingerprints from the gold plates until they glowed under the hallway lights. He paused at each one, smiling softly at the wins of the new generation. Victories achieved by knuckles, sweat, and spirit. It reminded him of when he was younger, much younger, but he never spoke about that. Not to them, not to anyone. Those days lived quietly inside him, tucked behind the scar lines and the slow, steady breathing of a man who had seen too much and spoke too little. At 6:15 a.m., the first class trickled in. Shoes squeaking across clean floors, water bottles clacking, light chatter floating in the air. Mr. Ellis stepped aside, pushing his cart toward the corner, giving the students room as they stretched. They didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge the fact that the mats they rolled on every day were spotless only because he scrubbed them on hands and knees. He leaned the mop against the wall and watched them warm up. Kicks slicing air, punches snapping through combos, sweat starting to bead along brows. He smiled, the kind of small smile that didn't ask to be noticed. The students had no idea what the scars on his knuckles meant, no idea what those steady hands had done. No idea the man sweeping their sweat once trained people who changed the world in shadows. He didn't correct them. He didn't need to. The big double glass doors swung open, announcing the arrival of the Academy's pride, Master Ronan Hale, mid-40s, stern face softened by wisdom, posture like a blade standing upright. He tapped his staff twice on the hardwood. "Line up." The students snapped to attention. Mr. Ellis quietly continued winding the extension cord around the vacuum handle. His motions were slow, patient. Master Hale gave him a small nod, a real one, respectful, acknowledging. Mr. Ellis returned the nod with a faint lift of his chin. Some mornings, Master Hale caught something in the janitor's eyes, a depth most people overlooked, something that didn't match a mop handle or a maintenance badge. But he never pressed. Respect meant knowing when not to ask. As the class began drills, the door slammed again. Hard, loud, arrogant. Carter Briggs had arrived. 18, tall, built like someone who believed muscle was the only language worth speaking. Black belt at too young an age. Loud, fast, skilled, undeniably skilled. But with an ego that always entered the doorway 3 seconds before he did. He strutted inside, hoodie slung over his shoulder, gym bag dragging behind him like he owned the place. "Morning, Carter," a classmate said. "Morning?" Carter scoffed. "It don't count as morning until I win something." Some students chuckled. Others rolled their eyes. Mr. Ellis kept wiping down a bench, saying nothing. Carter saw him and smirked. "Watch out, old man," he called across the room. "Don't break a hip bending over." A few students snorted with laughter. Mr. Ellis simply nodded politely. "Good morning, son." "Sure," Carter muttered, tossing his bag to the corner. "Don't trip over that mop." Master Hale's eyes tightened, but he didn't intervene. He wanted the lesson to form naturally, without force. Mr. Ellis continued wiping down the bench, unfazed. He'd been called worse. He'd survived worse. He'd fought worse. He had nothing to prove. But his eyes, when he turned away, carried something ancient, something old and earned, something no one in that room recognized. Carter sure didn't. He shadowboxed toward the mirror, praising himself under his breath. "No way this dump has anyone who can take me." Another student whispered softly, "He really needs a reality check." Mr. Ellis overheard, but kept polishing the metal frame of the trophy case. He whispered back, barely audible. "Life gives those out, if you wait long enough." He checked the time. 7:02 a.m. Another day, another class, another floor to mop. He moved toward the back area to fetch more cleaning solution, passing silently behind Carter, who didn't even notice he'd walked by like a ghost. But Master Hale noticed the way Mr. Ellis moved, the way his feet barely made sound, the way his back stayed straight, the way his balance never wavered. The coach narrowed his eyes. There was something familiar in that walk, something he couldn't place, something he would soon understand. Because today, this quiet, ordinary morning, was the last time the academy would ever see Mr. Ellis as just the janitor. By late afternoon, the academy was alive in full color. The sound of gloves smacking heavy bags echoed off the high ceilings. Pads popped. Kids grunted through combinations. Sneakers squeaked on mats as students shuffled, pivoted, reset. The air was thick with sweat, rubber, and that jittery mix of excitement and nerves that always hovered before sparring sessions. Mr. Ellis had finished mopping the side hallway and was now in his usual spot, near the back wall, by the storage closet. Not in the way. Never in the way. He leaned lightly on the mop handle, resting for a second, watching as the advanced class warmed up. They were good. Fast hands, snappy kicks, tight guard. All the things he liked to see. He watched them with that little half smile he always wore, like a proud uncle at a graduation. No one really clocked that, though. To most of them, his eyes might as well have been on the floor he scrubbed. "All right," Master Hale called out, clapping his hands together sharply. "Pair up. Light contact drills, respect your partners, no egos." He didn't have to look at Carter when he said it, but he did. Carter was already front and center, bouncing on the balls of his feet, black belt tied with a little extra tighten like he's on camera energy. He tapped his gloves together, jaw set in a cocky grin. "Coach," Carter said, "you gonna put me with somebody who can actually keep up this time?" A few of the students laughed. Master Hale's eyes cooled a bit. "I'll put you where you need to be." "Yeah," Carter said under his breath. "Which is first?" He ended up paired with one of the older brown belts, a kid named Sergio, quiet, technical. They bowed, touched gloves, and started moving. Mr. Ellis watched as Carter flooded the space with speed. Fast jabs, high kicks, a little too much force behind each shot for light contact. But Sergio hung in there, blocking, parrying, countering where he could. Carter couldn't stand that. He picked up the pace, snapping kicks harder, swinging hooks a little too wide, pushing Sergio backward, until Master Hale had to call, "Control, Carter!" Carter exhaled sharply through his nose and eased up, only on the surface. The other students loved it. They whispered on the sidelines, eyes wide. "Man, Carter is crazy fast. He's gonna go pro for sure. I would not want to be on his bad side." One of them glanced toward the back of the gym where Mr. Ellis was sweeping a corner. "Except him," the kid joked. "Old man's probably invisible to him." They laughed, and it was true. Carter never really saw him. He saw the mop, the uniform, the age, not the way the old man moved. Later, during a break, Carter plopped himself onto a bench, grabbing his water bottle. He chugged half of it, then carelessly flung the bottle toward the trash can. It missed. Water splashed, rolling right toward the cleaned floor. Before anyone could react, the bottle stopped, as if it had hit a wall. But it didn't. Mr. Ellis had stepped in, foot lightly trapping the rolling bottle. He bent down, scooped it up, and set it neatly in the trash can with one smooth motion. No stumble, no wobble, just a quick, precise adjustment. "Careful now," he said softly. "Floor's clean. Don't break it already." Some of the younger kids snickered. Carter smirked. "Hey, I pay membership," Carter said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Your job's to make it clean, right? I'm keeping you employed." One of his buddies laughed out loud. "Yo, chill." Mr. Ellis just gave a small nod. That same calm smile. "That so? Well, I'll send you the bill then." A couple of students nearby chuckled. Not because it was savage, just because it was unexpected. Carter's face tightened for a second. Then he laughed it off. "All right, old man," he said, pointing at him with the bottle cap. "Stay in your lane, yeah?" He slapped on his gloves again and hopped back to the mat. As sparring rotated partners, Mr. Ellis went back to fixing little things, straightening a stack of mats, tightening a loose screw on a wall bracket, quietly hooking a slightly torn strap back into place. He didn't move like someone in his 60s. His balance was perfect. His center of gravity low and steady. Every shift subtle, controlled. At one point, a dumbbell someone left too close to the edge of a rack started to roll. A younger kid bumped into it while backing away from a drill. The weight rocked, tipping off the rack. Mr. Ellis reached out and snatched it mid-fall. Just grabbed 10 pounds of sliding steel like it was a grocery bag. No grunt, no flinch. Wrist straight, hands solid, stance unchanged. He slid it back into place. Master Hale saw that. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully. He'd trained for decades. He knew what useless bravado looked like, and he knew what real, rooted ability looked like. That right there, was no average old man's reflex. "Rotate," he called, pulling his gaze away. Carter swapped partners again. This time he went against a timid purple belt, easily outclassing him. Carter didn't just win, he dominated, spinning back kicks that whooshed past the other kid's face, aggressive combos that forced the boy into defense-only mode. "Easy, Carter," Master Hale warned again. "You're here to train, not to show off." But Carter was addicted to the way the room watched him, to the way a few of the younger kids whispered, "Yo, he's a monster," as if that meant something good. After another flurry, the purple belt stumbled and sat down hard, chest heaving. Carter raised his gloves in victory, like it was a championship match. "Still undefeated in this gym," he grinned, walking in a little circle. "Y'all see that?" A few clapped. A few looked annoyed. Mr. Ellis gently started sweeping near the edge of the mats, keeping a respectful distance. Carter caught sight of him. "Except him," someone joked from behind Carter. "He could probably take you off the mat maintenance division." Laughter. Low but loud enough. Carter turned fully. His eyes landed on the old man with the mop. Mr. Ellis didn't look away. He just smiled that same soft smile and kept sweeping. Something about that calmness irritated Carter more than any insult could have. "You know what martial arts even is, old man?" Carter called out, loud enough for the whole class to hear. "Or you just wipe up after it?" A few ooh sounds rippled out. Master Hale's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he didn't step in yet. Mr. Ellis stopped sweeping. He rested both hands on the top of the mop and looked at Carter. His eyes weren't angry. They were tired, patient. "You learnin' how to fight," Mr. Ellis said quietly, "but not yet how to be." The room went still for a second. Then someone snorted. Carter laughed. "What's that even mean, Grandpa? You talk like some fortune cookie." A couple of the students cracked up. "You ever even thrown a punch in your life?" Carter added, voice dripping with mockery. "Or is your martial art just mop jitsu?" That got bigger laughs. Even a few of the kids who knew it was wrong laughed nervously, not wanting to be singled out. Mr. Ellis didn't snap, didn't flinch. He smiled, old, sad, a little knowing. "More than a few," he said simply. Carter rolled his eyes. "Yeah, okay. Bet the last time you threw a punch." TV was still in black and white. The laughter got louder. In the corner, Master Hale exhaled slowly through his nose. He'd let this go on longer than he liked, trying to see if the lesson would land on its own. It hadn't yet, but he wasn't the only one watching. Colonel Isaiah Brooks hadn't arrived today yet, but someone else in the cluster of parents at the back had noticed the way Mr. Ellis had shifted his weight when Carter walked past earlier, accidentally, bumping into him. ... Carter had done it on purpose. Of course, shoulder check, smug grin. But instead of stumbling, Mr. Ellis had simply turned with the bump, letting the force roll past him like water hitting a rock at the right angle. His foot slid half an inch. His balance never broke. Master Hale had seen that too. It looked like something he taught, something advanced, something you didn't forget once you learned it. The subtle cuts continued throughout the week. "Yo, watch your step, old man." When Carter accidentally kicked too close while Ellis swept. "Careful, we don't want you to snap like those old boards," when Ellis fixed a broken piece of equipment. "Bet you'd fold in one round," whispered loudly enough for him to hear. Every time, Mr. Ellis responded the same way, with a nod, with a soft, "Yes, sir," or "Take care now," with silence that somehow felt more powerful than any comeback. Students assumed he stayed quiet because he was weak, because he had nothing to say, because there was nothing in him worth defending. But Master Hale saw it differently. That wasn't fear. That was restraint. The kind you only see in people who already know exactly what they can do and choose not to. One evening, as the sun dipped orange through the front windows and the last class finished stretching, Master Hale caught Mr. Ellis in the hallway, stacking cleaned pads. "Ellis," Hale said casually, "you ever train?" Mr. Ellis's hands paused for the slightest second before continuing. He hummed. "A long time ago." "In what?" "Different things." Hale smiled slightly. "You move like it wasn't that long ago." Mr. Ellis chuckled under his breath. "Some things stay with you, whether you want them to or not." Hale studied him. "You sure you're just a janitor?" Ellis met his eyes, really met them this time. "For now," he said. And with that, he picked up the last pad and walked away. Out on the main floor, Carter was telling a group of younger kids how he'd wipe the floor with anyone, any age, any day. He laughed. They laughed. Mr. Ellis just swept. Quietly, patiently, waiting for the moment he'd spent his whole life hoping would never come, when a kid drunk on his own talent would finally point at the man with the mop and say, "Fight me." Saturday afternoons at Hale Martial Arts Academy were always loud. The kind of loud that rattled the windows, vibrated the mats, and made every kid in town want to sneak a peek through the glass doors. Sparring day. The one day the advanced students got to show off, test themselves, act like future champions. Parents filled the benches. Younger kids lined the wall, eyes big with excitement. The sound of gloves snapping, feet sliding, and coaches shouting corrections made the building feel alive. Mr. Ellis was moving quietly along the edges, pushing a broom, tidying up stray wraps and discarded water bottles. He always worked slower on Saturdays. The energy of the students, the intensity of the sparring, the way fire burned in young eyes, it all reminded him of a time long past. Back when he was the one on the mats. Back when people didn't overlook him. Back when he didn't try to disappear. He brushed the thought aside and swept near the corner, always staying out of the way. Carter Briggs dominated the center of the room, again and again and again. He was on a streak today, dropping every challenger in the advanced rotation. Some lasted a minute, some lasted only 10 seconds. Carter had speed, power, stamina, and what he loved most, an audience. He was eating it up. After flooring his latest opponent, Carter strutted backward, bouncing on his toes. "That's 5 in a row," he shouted. "Who's next? Who wants seconds?" A few students laughed. A few rolled their eyes. Master Hale gave him a stern look. "Control, Carter. This isn't the Olympics." Carter shrugged like the words slid right off him. "Coach, it's all love. I'm just setting the standard high." He strutted toward his friends, chest puffed, soaking up their praise. Mr. Ellis passed behind them, pushing his broom softly across a dusty strip of floor. As he passed, one of Carter's friends nudged him. "Careful, dude. Training beast coming through." Carter laughed. "Man, he ain't no beast. Old guy should be watching from home with a blanket and some soup." The younger students snickered again. Mr. Ellis didn't react. He just pivoted the broom and kept working. Master Hale caught the moment, jaw tightening slightly. He walked over to Carter. "Briggs, enough. Focus on your technique, not your mouth." Carter raised both hands innocently. Hey, no offense, coach, just joking." Master Hale didn't smile, but Carter wasn't done. He turned to the crowd, voice booming. "Somebody get the mop warrior over here. Bet he could use some cardio." Laughter erupted, louder this time, fueled by adrenaline and teenage cruelty. A few respectful kids winced. Master Hale opened his mouth to shut it down, but before the coach could speak, fate stepped in. Sergio, the quiet older brown belt, slipped on a bit of moisture on the floor near the bag rack. His foot skidded, and his elbow clipped the metal frame. The heavy bag chain jolted. The bag swung wild. A 45-pound plate on a nearby bench teetered. It toppled off the edge, right towards Sergio's foot. The crowd gasped, but Mr. Ellis was already moving. He dropped the broom, stepped across the mat in one fluid motion, caught the falling weight with one hand, palm absorbing the full drop, and slid it safely onto the ground. No grunt, no strain, no imbalance, just precision. Perfect precision. Dead silence followed. Sergio stared at him, stunned. How did you grab that? Carter scoffed loudly, breaking the tension. Oh, please, that was luck. Even a cat gets lucky sometimes. The room snapped back into noisy chatter. The docent parents whispered. The younger kids stared wide-eyed. Master Hale's eyes narrowed more than before. He'd trained fighters for 20 years. What he saw wasn't luck. It was skill. Refined, instinctive skill. Something was off. Something about Mr. Ellis wasn't normal. But Carter saw none of that. He only saw an audience and an opportunity. He stepped forward, pointing both gloves at the janitor with a mocking grin. You know what? Let's find out how lucky he really is. The gym went quiet. Mr. Ellis lifted the broom, dusting off the bristles calmly. Nothing to find out, son. Carter smirked wider, louder, sharper. Oh, I think there is. Why don't you step up? Spar with me. Mr. Ellis paused mid-sweep. The room inhaled. He turned slowly to look at Carter. Not angry, not afraid, just sad. Like he'd hoped this moment wouldn't come. You don't want this, son, he said softly. A ripple swept across the gym. What'd he say? He said you don't want this. No way. He's scared? He should be. Carter barked a laugh. Oh, trust me, I do. Let's give the kids a show. The crowd lit up. Spar, 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 spar. They chanted like a drum line. Master Hale stepped forward quickly. Enough. This isn't happening. Carter, you know better. But he'd forgotten. Crowds have power. Teenagers have pride. And Carter had the ego of a wildfire. The students kept chanting. Parents joined in. Phones were pulled out. Excitement electrified the room that moments ago had been ordinary. Carter raised both arms like he'd won already. Come on, old man, he taunted. Step on the mat. Let's see what you got. Mr. Ellis leaned his broom against the wall, turned back, and something in the room shifted. Not magic, not supernatural, just a change in the air, the quiet kind before a storm. He began unbuttoning his faded work vest, folded it, placed it gently on the edge of the bench. Then he stepped onto the mat. The gym erupted. No way! He's actually doing it. Dude's gonna get destroyed. Oh, this is gonna be hilarious. Master Hale lifted a hand. Ellis, you sure? The old man looked him in the eye. I'm tired of the boy hurting others to feel tall. That answer sent chills through the coach. He nodded slowly. Carter strutted to the opposite side of the mat, rolling his shoulders, cracking his neck, shadowboxing like a YouTube clip. Try not to fall too fast, he teased. Mr. Ellis bent down, tightening his old sneakers, the same sneakers he'd worn to mop floors for years. He rose slowly, straightened his spine, rolled his wrists, then he stepped into stance. Not a rigid karate stance, not a flashy taekwondo stance. Something different, something older, something far more dangerous. Master Hale whispered under his breath, That's not janitor stance." Carter didn't notice, but he should have, because the last time Mr. Ellis stood like that, men twice Carter's size had learned exactly why soldiers used to call him the Quiet Storm. The gym felt like it had shrunk. Parents leaned forward on the benches, phones half raised. Kids sat cross-legged against the wall, eyes wide, barely blinking. Even the punching bags hanging in the back seemed to sway slower, like they were watching too. On one end of the mat, Carter Briggs, black belt, 18, hungry for attention, gloves up, ego blazing. On the other, Mr. Ellis, mid-60s, no belt, no gloves. Just a worn pair of sneakers, and a stance that didn't look like anything they'd seen in class, and yet somehow looked more real than all of it. Master Hale stood at the edge of the mat, hands on his hips, face tight. "Light contact," he said to Carter. "You hear me? Light." Carter nodded lazily. Yeah, I'll be gentle. Don't worry, coach." He flashed a grin that made a few of the younger kids snicker. Mr. Ellis didn't say a word. His eyes were calm, his shoulders loose. If he was nervous, nobody could see it. If he was angry, nobody felt it. He just was. "Ready?" Master Hale asked. Carter rolled his neck, born ready. Mr. Ellis gave the slightest nod. "Begin." Carter moved first. Of course he did. He bounced in, testing jabs, showing off perfect textbook form, sharp punches, fast hands, footwork he'd practiced 1,000 times. The crowd oohed at his speed. Mr. Ellis didn't swing back. He didn't even lift his hands. He just turned his body a few degrees, stepped just enough, letting the air between them take the hit instead of his face. Carter's glove barely brushed his shoulder. Carter's grin twitched. He fired another combo. Jab, cross, hook. This time, Mr. Ellis dipped at the last second, and the hook swept past his beard, so close a few gray hairs lifted in the breeze. Still no counter, no block, just absence. The old man was there, and then he simply wasn't where the punch landed. Some of the older students frowned. That looked smooth as hell. He's dodging without even looking like he's trying. "Y'all saw that pivot?" Carter forced a laugh. Okay, you got good sidestep game." He slid in faster, foot stomping the mat with more authority, testing a front kick. Mr. Ellis turned his hips, let the kick glide by his torso with an inch to spare. His back foot anchored, balance unshaken. From the doorway, the bell above the entrance jingled. Nobody looked. Everybody was locked on the mat, except one person. The man who just walked in stopped cold. He was tall, broad-shouldered, mid-60s as well, dressed in a worn military-style jacket. His hair was buzzed short, gray at the edges. His eyes, sharp, assessing, did one sweep of the room, landing squarely on the man in old sneakers, gliding around the arrogant black belt. And those eyes went wide. "No way," he whispered. No one heard him over the shuffle of feet and the slap of gloves. On the mat, Carter decided he was done playing. "All right, old man," he said, breathing a little deeper now. "Let's see what you got. You gonna dance all day, or you gonna throw something?" Mr. Ellis just shook his head. "You don't want that, son." That quiet line irritated Carter more than any insult. He feinted left, pivoted hard, and launched a sudden blitz. Full speed, full intention, full ego. His fist came streaking toward the old man's head, all that speed and power aimed like a missile. Right then, the man in the doorway shouted, "Stop!" The word cracked through the gym like a gunshot. Carter heard it, but he didn't stop. Momentum had him. Pride had him. The audience had him. He committed. Everything after that happened in less than a second. Mr. Ellis shifted his weight, just a whisper to the side. Carter's punch cut through empty air. The old man's foot slid. His hand brushed the back of Carter's neck, as gently as you'd guide a kid around a corner. And Carter's own momentum took him forward, straight down. F. He smashed into the mat with a thud that echoed up into the rafters. The entire gym exploded. What the? He didn't even hit him! Yo, did y'all see that? Carter blinked, dazed, cheek pressed to the mat. His brain scrambled to catch up. 1 second he was attack mode, next second the floor had introduced itself to him. He pushed himself up, eyes wide, disbelief burning hot. "You tripped me!" he snapped. Mr. Ellis shook his head calmly. "No, son, you tripped yourself." Heads whipped back toward the doorway. The man in the military jacket was already striding toward the mat, face a swirl of shock and something like awe. "Stop!" he repeated, but this time his voice was less command and more plea. "Stop this right now." Master Hale stepped forward. "Sir, can I help you?" The man didn't break eye contact with the janitor. "Good Lord," he breathed. "I knew that was you." The room's volume dropped instantly. Everyone turned. Even Carter froze on his hands and knees. Mr. Ellis slowly straightened, eyes narrowing just a fraction as he took in the new arrival. Then his expression shifted, a hint of recognition sparking behind his calm. "Isaiah?" he said quietly. A murmur rolled through the students. The man chuckled once, shaky. "Haven't heard you say my name in 20 years, sir." Wait, one of the students whispered. "He called the janitor sir?" The man stepped onto the edge of the mat, eyes still locked onto Ellis. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man announced, voice steadying into the tone of someone used to commanding attention. "You need to understand something before this goes any further." Master Hale nodded slowly. "All right, go on." The man lifted a hand toward Ellis, almost like he was presenting a legend. "Some of you trained to be fighters," he said. "Some of you hope to be champions. But that man right there," he took a breath, "that man is one of the best hand-to-hand instructors Special Forces ever had." The words hit the room like a tidal wave. Half the students just stared. The other half whispered, "Wait, what? Special Forces? He's joking, right?" Carter's face drained of color. The man continued. "Y'all know me as Colonel Isaiah Brooks, retired now, but back in the day there was one name the toughest soldiers didn't say lightly." He smiled faintly, eyes shining. "They called him Shadow Wolf." He nodded at Ellis. "And that," he said, "is him." The gym went completely silent, like someone had hit mute. Every eye swung back to the janitor, the same man who'd mopped sweat for years, picked up their trash, fixed their equipment. Mr. Ellis looked uncomfortable, almost embarrassed. "I told y'all not to go throwing my name around," he muttered. Brooks laughed softly. "Sir, with respect, the kids ought to know who's cleaning their floors." Master Hale's mouth parted. You're telling me he's real? The Shadow Wolf? I thought that story was just rumor." Isaiah shook his head. "Real as it gets. I watched him train men twice your size, Carter." He turned his gaze to the young fighter. "And fold him in half without breaking a sweat." All eyes snapped to Carter. Carter swallowed hard. Mr. Ellis lifted a hand, palm out. "Colonel, that was another life. I retired from all that a long time ago." Brooks nodded, but his voice thinned with emotion. "Yes, sir, you did. And we've been safer for it, and worse for it." One of the younger kids tugged on his mom's sleeve. "Mom, he's like a real-life movie character." Carter slowly got to his feet, cheeks burning, ego cracking down the middle. He looked at Mr. Ellis, really looked at him, the calm stance, the subtle scars on his hands, the quiet control he'd mistaken for weakness. His smirk was gone. Every joke he'd ever made about Old Man suddenly felt like rocks in his teeth. You trained soldiers?" Carter asked, voice smaller than it had been all year. Mr. Ellis nodded slightly. "Yes, son, a long time ago." "In real fights?" another student blurted out. Like actual life or death?" Ellis's eyes darkened, just for a moment. "Yes," he said simply. That one word changed the whole room. Respect rolled through the air like a wave on impact. Guilt rode close behind it. Master Hale exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I knew you moved like somebody who'd done this before," he said softly. "I just didn't know how much." Brooks shook his head, almost laughing at the absurdity of it. "You have one of the most dangerous men I've ever known cleaning your toilets, and you didn't know?" Mr. Ellis smiled faintly. "Best job I ever had, truth be told." Everyone stared. Carter lowered his gloves, shame washing over him so strong it made his chest ache. He'd been mocking that. Not just an elder, not just a janitor, but a man who had lived more fights than Carter claimed in his bragging stories. The old man took one slow step toward Carter, his voice soft and steady. "I told you," Mr. Ellis said. "You didn't want this." And for the first time since he started at the academy, Carter believed him. The revelation hit the gym like a shockwave. Colonel Brooks' words still hung heavy in the air. "That man is one of the best hand-to-hand instructors Special Forces ever had." Foams lowered. Mouths fell open. Even the punching bags seemed to stop swaying. But nobody reacted harder than Carter. He stood frozen on the mat, gloves hanging useless at his sides, chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. His earlier confidence, the swagger, the smirk, the easy arrogance, had drained from his body like someone had pulled a plug. "Shadow Wolf," he whispered under his breath. He's real?" He looked at Mr. Ellis again. Really looked this time. The old man wasn't glowing with power. He wasn't flexing. He wasn't posing. He didn't even look proud. He looked disappointed. Not in Carter, in the situation, in the way truth always came out the wrong way, at the wrong time. Carter felt heat rise up the back of his neck, shame mixing with confusion, fear mixing with anger. "Yo, I didn't know," someone muttered from the wall. "Nobody knew," a younger kid added. "We've been clowning a legend for years." Master Hale let out a slow breath, rubbing his temples. He stepped forward. "That's enough sparring for today." Carter cut him off. "No," he snapped. Too loud, too emotional. Eyes whipped toward him. Carter's jaw tightened. "I want the round. Let me finish the round." Master Hale frowned hard. "Carter, this is not the moment." But Carter's pride, battered and bleeding, refused to die. He pointed at Mr. Ellis again. But this time, the gesture wasn't mocking. It was desperate. "I need this," he said, voice cracking. "One clean spar. No jokes, no trash talk, just a real round." Colonel Brooks raised an eyebrow. "Son, that would be a mistake." Carter's fists clenched. "I don't care." Mr. Ellis sighed softly, a long, tired breath. "Child, you fightin' the wrong person." Carter shook his head. "I won't swing wild. I won't show off. Just give me a fair match." The gym fell silent. Nobody laughed. Nobody shouted. Nobody chanted. It wasn't hype anymore. It wasn't entertainment. This was a kid begging not to drown in his own shame. Master Hale opened his mouth again, but this time Mr. Ellis gently raised a hand. "It's all right," he said quietly. "If he needs the round, he'll get the round. Carter stepped back, lifting his gloves. This time, there was no arrogance, no bravado, no smirk tugging at his lips, just raw, frightened determination. "Thank you," he whispered. Mr. Ellis nodded respectfully, and the spar began. Carter moved slower this time, measured, respectful, testing range, checking angles, trying to read the man in front of him. His footwork was cleaner, tighter, without the wild showmanship he loved. His eyes stayed locked on Ellis's chest, not his head, the mark of someone who finally understood there was something to learn. Mr. Ellis lifted his hands this time, open palms, relaxed, the stance of someone who knew what every breath, every twitch, every shift meant. He didn't advance, he didn't retreat. He simply existed in the perfect middle. Carter threw a cautious jab. Tap. The old man's hand slipped forward, not striking, just redirecting. Like guiding a child's hand away from a hot stove. Carter sucked in a breath. He tried again. Jab, cross, tap, tap, both redirected before they even fully formed. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "He reads him like a book." "He's not even blocking, he's just moving. That's crazy control." Even Colonel Brooks nodded in appreciation. "That's the old style, the one nobody teaches anymore." Carter stepped sideways, searching for a new angle, trying to break the old man's rhythm. There was no rhythm to break. Mr. Ellis moved like water, every pressure redirected, every attack absorbed, every intention understood before it became a punch. Carter grew frustrated, but not cocky. His breath quickened. "Come on," he muttered. "Come on." He fired a real combo, hook, cross, low kick. The old man didn't counter, didn't strike, didn't hurt him. He simply stepped out of the path, by the width of a hair. Carter's heel slid across the mat. He stumbled, not because Ellis pushed him, because Ellis wasn't there anymore. Carter caught himself before falling. The gym exhaled in unison. Master Hale whispered, "Good Lord, he's not just good, he's effortless." Carter panted, frustration and respect mixing in his chest. You're not even trying," he said breathlessly. Mr. Ellis gave a gentle smile. "Neither are you. You're just wanting to be seen." Carter froze. He didn't need to ask. He knew it was true. Every punch he'd ever thrown, every time he'd mocked someone weaker, every time he bragged about wins, he wasn't fighting opponents. He was fighting emptiness, trying to fill it. Something inside Carter cracked open. But before anyone could speak, he snapped, not out of arrogance, out of pain. He charged forward with a raw, honest, full-speed strike, the most powerful punch he'd thrown all day, driven not by ego, but by a lifetime of needing to feel strong. The old man stepped in, placed one hand on Carter's wrist, one hand on his shoulder, and gently redirected the entire attack downward. Carter collapsed to one knee, not injured, just overpowered by technique so refined it looked like magic. The gym fell silent. Not a single phone recorded. Not a single whisper spread. Because every person in that room, from the youngest white belt to the oldest parent, knew they were watching something rare. Not violence, not dominance, mastery, humility, history. Carter knelt there, chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face, gloves still raised, but his spirit cracked open. Mr. Ellis stood before him, breathing slow and calm, not even winded. He reached out and lightly rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Strength without humility," he said softly, "is just weakness in a louder outfit." Carter's lip trembled. His vision blurred. The emotional hit landed harder than any punch. The humiliation was gone. Now there was just truth. and it broke him. He bowed his head. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The crowd felt the shift, a powerful one, the kind that changes a kid's life. Mr. Ellis smiled gently. "It's all right, son. You're learning." He reached down and helped Carter stand. Carter stood on shaking legs, sweat dripping down the bridge of his nose, breath trembling. The gym lights felt brighter now, hot on his skin, harsh on his ego. His heart hammered against his ribcage, as if trying to escape the truth sinking into him. For the first time since joining the academy, he wasn't the strongest person in the room. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't even close. He wasn't the center of attention. He wasn't the loudest voice. He wasn't untouchable. He was just a kid, standing in front of someone he'd underestimated so badly he could taste the regret. His chest hitched. Master Hale stepped forward, but stopped himself. He recognized what was happening. The same breaking he'd seen in young fighters who finally realized martial arts wasn't about strength. It was about character. Carter swallowed, eyes glassy. "I didn't know," he whispered, voice cracking. Mr. Ellis stepped closer, hands gentle at his sides. "Of course you didn't, son. You weren't looking." Carter's throat tightened. He wiped his face with his glove, trying to hide the tear that had already escaped. Around them, students watched silently. All those kids who used to cheer for Carter, laugh at his jokes, follow his lead. Now they saw everything clearly, and none of them were laughing. Carter took a shaky breath. I was just trying to be seen," Ellis said softly. "And that's all right. We all been there." The kindness in his voice cracked something deeper open inside Carter. His eyes flooded. He dropped his head, shoulders slumping. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking in half. "I'm really sorry." Mr. Ellis didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, placed a hand on Carter's back, and steadied him like a father would steady a son. "You judge by belts," Ellis said gently. "But I judge by hearts, and yours ain't bad, child. Just lost for a minute." Carter's breath hitched again. He'd received praise before, for strength, speed, winning, but never for his heart. Never for something deeper. He swiped his eyes aggressively, embarrassed. I made fun of you. I treated you like nobody." Mr. Ellis shook his head. "I don't mind being nobody. Safer that way." "Why?" Carter choked. "Why hide who you were?" A heavy silence rolled through the room. Colonel Isaiah Brooks stepped forward. "Because," he said quietly, "the man you mocked spent half his life teaching soldiers how to survive situations you can't even imagine." All eyes turned to him. Brooks's voice lowered into something raw, swollen with old grief. "You think you're tough, Carter? Try training men who know every day might be their last. Try watching half your team never come home. Try being the one responsible for teaching them how not to die." Carter's jaw trembled. Mr. Ellis didn't interrupt. His eyes softened, as if he knew where this was going. Brooks stepped closer to the young fighter. "You think you know pressure? Son, that man carried the weight of entire missions on his conscience." The colonel's voice broke, just slightly. "And when he lost men he loved like brothers, he left the battlefield. He walked away from a world that demanded blood. He promised himself he'd never teach violence again." Students held their breath. Brooks went on. "He took a job as a janitor because he wanted peace, because he didn't want to hurt anymore, because he wanted life simple, quiet, safe." Carter's eyes overflowed again. "And you," Brooks said, pointing at him gently, not angrily, "made him feel small for wanting peace. You mocked him for choosing mercy over power." Carter's knees buckled. He sank down slowly until he was sitting on the mat, gloves resting uselessly on his legs. Students looked away, not out of judgment, but out of respect for the boy's breaking. Master Hale stepped forward, placing a hand on Carter's shoulder. "Son, today's the day you grow up." Carter let out a shaky breath. I didn't know." Ellis knelt down in front of him, lowering himself slowly, like his bones were stiff, but his spirit was steady. "Now you do," he said softly. Carter lifted his red, trembling eyes. "Can you forgive me?" Mr. Ellis smiled gently. "Son, I forgave you before you ever threw the first insult." Carter broke complete. He leaned forward, hands over his face, shoulders shaking. Tears soaked into the canvas mat he'd spent years dominating. Mr. Ellis rested a hand on the boy's back again, rubbing slow circles like he'd done this 1,000 times. For soldiers younger than Carter, tougher than Carter, more broken than Carter. The gym watched in reverent silence. Nobody mocked. Nobody snickered. Nobody rolled their eyes. This was vulnerability. Real vulnerability. The heart of martial arts stripped bare. Carter eventually pulled himself together, wiping his swollen eyes. His voice came out hoarse. "What do I do?" he asked. Ellis smiled. "First, you stand up." Carter swallowed and pushed himself to his feet. "Second," Ellis said, "you learn. For real this time." Carter nodded slowly. "Yes, sir." "Third," Ellis added with a small chuckle, "keep them hands up. Even masters get old." A few students laughed quietly, this time with warmth, not mockery. Carter took a deep, steadying breath. "Will you teach me? Not just fighting, but the stuff you just said, the discipline, the humility, everything." Mr. Ellis straightened, joints popping softly. "For the right reasons," he said. "Not for show, not for crowds, not for being the tough kid in the room." Carter nodded harder. "Yes, sir. I promise." Mr. Ellis looked into his eyes, really looked, searching for ego, for arrogance, for the spark of the boy he'd just humbled. But all he found was sincerity. "Then I'll teach you," Ellis said. A stunned silence fell. Master Hale blinked. "Wait, teach? Like, actually teach?" Mr. Ellis chuckled. "A little. I ain't running no boot camp, but I'll show these kids a thing or two." A cheer erupted, not wild, not rowdy, but genuine, relieved, respectful. Colonel Brooks smiled proudly. "About time you came out of retirement, sir." Mr. Ellis gave a small nod. "I ain't coming out, just sharing what I've been given." He looked around the room, at faces young and old, humbled and hopeful. "Strength," he said, "ain't in the fist, it's in the restraint." The students bowed their heads. Carter bowed deeply, deeper than he'd ever bowed to anyone, and for the first time in the Academy's history, the janitor wasn't invisible. He was their teacher. He was their elder. He was the quiet storm finally seen. The gym felt different the next morning. Not louder, not quieter, just different. As if something heavy had been lifted off the mats. As if the air itself respected the space again. Students trickled in with hushed voices, stealing glances toward the back hallway where Mr. Ellis usually swept in peace. Only today, they weren't ignoring him. They were waiting for him. Master Hale stood near the center of the mat, arms crossed, looking like a man who'd slept 4 hours, but aged backward 10 years. He'd always believed martial arts wasn't just punching and kicking. It was humility, reflection, growth. Yesterday had confirmed everything he preached. Carter came in early, a first. Hair messy, hoodie half-zipped, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He didn't swagger. He didn't boast. He didn't try to be seen. He walked straight toward the janitor's closet. He stopped outside the door, took a deep breath, and knocked softly. The door creaked open. Mr. Ellis stepped out, work vest on, hands still smelling faintly of floor cleaner and lemon disinfectant. Carter bowed deeply, respectfully, all the way from the waist. "Good morning, sir," he said quietly. Mr. Ellis blinked, then smiled a little. "Morning, son." Carter straightened, shoulders squared in a new way, not combative, but humble. I'm ready. I meant it yesterday. I want to learn. The right way this time." Ellis studied him for a long moment, searching, evaluating, reading him deeper than any coach ever had. "You know what the right way means?" Ellis asked gently. Carter swallowed. "Yes, sir. It means not fighting to show off, not fighting to win the room, fighting to grow, to protect." Ellis nodded slowly. "Good, but there's something deeper than that." Carter's eyebrows pulled together. "What's that?" Ellis tapped a finger against the boy's chest, right over his sternum. "The fight in here," he said. "Until you learn how to quiet that one, the rest don't matter." Carter nodded again, this time swallowing hard. "Yes, sir." Ellis turned, picked up a small bundle he'd prepared. Old hand wraps. Faded, frayed, clearly used, but well cared for. He held them out. "Put these on." Carter accepted them like a sacred object. His hands shook slightly as he unwrapped them. He looked up. "Are these yours?" Ellis nodded once. "Used to be. Thought I'd never give them to anyone. Thought I'd buried that part of my life." Carter didn't speak. He couldn't. He wrapped his hands carefully, honoring the moment. When he finished, Ellis nodded with approval. "All right, son. First lesson." He stepped back. "Throw a punch." Carter froze. At you?" "No. At life, at your habits, at your ego." Ellis smiled softly. "But we gon' start with me." Carter exhaled sharply, raised his hands, and took the stance he'd trained for years. Ellis shook his head. "No, not that one. Your real stance. The one you hide behind when you scared." Carter frowned. I don't know what that is." Ellis chuckled. "You do. Show me." Carter hesitated, then lowered his hands slightly, easing into a more natural stance. Not wide, not perfect, just real. Ellis nodded. "There you go." "No." Carter jabbed. Ellis caught it mid-air, effortlessly. The same gentle hold he'd used yesterday. But instead of throwing Carter off balance, he just held the boy's fist. "Feel that?" Carter nodded. "Too much tension," Ellis said. "You ain't fightin' me. You fightin' yourself." He released the fist. "Try again." Carter jabbed slower this time. Ellis stepped aside. "Better. But your breath ain't in sync." Another jab. Ellis tapped Carter's shoulder. "Balance off." Another. "Too high." Again. "Too emotional." Again. "Too proud." Carter's breath trembled. "Sir, I don't know how to fix it." "You will." Ellis stepped back. "But you gotta break yourself down first. That's what yesterday was." Carter lowered his hands. "I'm ready." Ellis nodded once, then raised his voice so the entire gym could hear. "All right, class," he said, hands behind his back. "First lesson starts now." Everyone froze. Every head turned toward him. Master Hale stepped forward slightly, as if to say he hadn't asked for a class to begin, but he didn't stop it. Ellis continued. "Y'all judge strength by punches." He tapped his chest again. "I judge strength by hearts." Students straightened. "You want to learn what I know?" He pointed to Carter. "Then look at him." Carter stood still, eyes down, cheeks warm. He got humbled yesterday. Didn't quit. Didn't run. Didn't blame nobody. Ellis nodded proudly. That's strength. A ripple of respect moved through the room. Some kids even bowed. Master Hale took a step forward and bowed deeply to Ellis. Will you teach them? He asked quietly. Ellis sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I ain't here to be a sensei, Ronan. We don't need a sensei, Hale replied. We need a teacher, a real one. Ellis looked around, at the eager faces, at the humbled ones, at the hopeful ones. He had tried to hide from the world, hide from violence. But teaching wasn't violence. Teaching was healing. All right then, he said finally. I'll teach once a week. Basics, discipline. You learn it right, you'll carry it for life. The gym erupted in quiet applause. Not loud, not childish, but respectful. Carter stepped forward, bowing again. Thank you, he whispered. Ellis rested a hand on his shoulder. Lesson number 2, he said softly. Strength without humility ain't strength. Carter nodded deeply. I'll learn. I know, Ellis said. Over the next few weeks, everything transformed. The ego died. The bragging stopped. The laughter that used to target others now encouraged them. Students bowed when they passed Ellis. They helped clean up after class. They trained harder, but quieter, more focused. Carter, especially. He became the first to arrive, the last to leave, the most respectful in the room. He led warm-ups now, not shouting, not boasting, but guiding with a humbled tone. And every time he tied his belt, he glanced at the old hand wraps tucked inside his locker, like a reminder of where real strength came from. Ellis never raised his voice, never bragged, never sought praise. He simply taught, softly, patiently, like a man who'd finally found peace in giving back. The academy didn't just improve, it healed, it grew, stronger, kinder, more unified. All because one janitor, one quiet legend, decided to open a door he'd closed decades ago. Not to fight, ought to teach. The academy looked almost the same. Same trophy case, same blue mats, same heavy bags swaying on their chains, same sunbeams cutting through the high windows in the early afternoon. But the feeling inside, completely different. The place breathed softer, gentler, more respectful. The culture had changed, quietly, deeply, like a shift in the tide you don't notice until the whole ocean is different. And at the center of that shift, Mr. Ellis mopped the floor. Same mop, same bucket, same slow, steady circles, same peaceful rhythm. Except this time, every student who passed him did something small, but powerful. They bowed. Some paused with their hands at their sides, some pressed their palms together, some dipped their heads with deep sincerity. None of them did it out of fear. All of them did it out of respect. Carter jogged past him, leading warm-ups now with new calmness. Keep your back straight. Breathe with purpose, he said to the younger kids. He glanced at Ellis as he passed and gave a slight bow mid-jog. Ellis returned a small nod. Carter smiled at that, the kind of smile you earn, not demand. Master Hale walked over, arms crossed loosely, watching the janitor move the mop with precision that looked more like meditation. Never seen the place so grounded, he said quietly. Ellis shrugged. Kids just needed a little guidance is all. Not the kind I could give, Hale said. Not the kind they'd listen to from anyone else. Ellis kept mopping. Sometimes, Hale went on, You teach more with silence than any lecture I ever gave." Ellis gave a faint smile at that. "Silence is underrated," he said. Hale chuckled softly. "You staying with us long term?" Ellis wrung out the mop. "As long as y'all need me." Hale shook his head. "We don't just need you. We're better because of you." Ellis paused, not because he didn't believe it, but because he'd never needed praise to keep moving. "People want noise," Ellis said gently. "They think strength gotta be loud. But strength, real strength, makes the least sound." Hale nodded slowly. "You're living proof." Across the gym, Carter finished leading stretches and jogged toward Ellis with a water bottle in hand. "Sir?" he asked softly. Ellis raised an eyebrow. "Hmm?" Carter held out the bottle with both hands. "A respectful offering, more than a casual gesture. I got you water. Hope that's okay." Ellis accepted it with a small nod. "Thank you, son." Carter hesitated, swallowed, then said what had been sitting in his chest for weeks. "You changed everything here," he said quietly. "And you changed me too." Ellis leaned on the mop handle. "Nah, you changed yourself. I just opened a door you was scared to look through." Carter's throat tightened. "Still, thank you." Ellis placed a hand gently on his shoulder, squeezing once. "You gone. Make a fine man," he said. "Just don't let your fists talk louder than your heart." Carter nodded deeply. "Yes, sir." He bowed again, lower this time, then jogged off to help the younger kids with drills. Ellis watched him go. A faint smile crept across his lips. When the gym emptied for lunch, Ellis stayed behind. He always stayed behind. He folded towels, straightened gloves, fixed a loose screw on a wobbling bench, wiped down handprints on the mirror. Spat, he mopped the last corner of the mat. Slow, steady strokes. The same mop he'd used long before anyone knew who he was. He paused, watched the light reflect on the freshly cleaned floor. And for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to breathe. Not the breath of a soldier, not the breath of a teacher, not the breath of a man hiding his past, just a breath of peace, the kind that fills a life instead of emptying it. "A good floor," he murmured softly to himself. "A good place to end up." He picked up the mop bucket and headed toward the storage room. When he reached the doorway, he stopped and glanced back at the academy, at the trophies shining brighter than ever, at the mats cleaner than they'd ever been, at the echoes of discipline and respect filling the air. He spoke, not loud, not dramatic, just enough for the empty room to hear. "People saw an old man with a mop," he said with a smile, "but they never saw the battles he survived." He switched off the lights. The gym dimmed into soft shadows. He whispered one last truth, the moral he'd earned through years of silence. "Strength ain't in fists," he said. "It's in how gently you use 'em." Then he closed the door behind him. The academy and everyone inside it would never be the same, and neither would he.